Namaste and welcome to the UPSC News Analysis for the 7th of May, 2025. Today we're taking a deep dive into a set of really important current affairs. We'll explain the basic ideas behind them and point out what's most relevant for your UPSC mains preparation. On our radar today, these nationwide civil defense drills, India's improved ranking in the Human Development Index, the Supreme Court's firm stance on firecrackers in the NCR, the significant India-UK Free Trade Agreement, the ongoing Sitla-Jamuna Link Canal dispute, a notable conviction in an illegal mining case, the UN Security Council's discussion on the recent attack in Pahalgam, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the MCA probe into Blue Smart and Gensel, and finally, the latest Human Development Report with its focus on artificial intelligence.
That's quite a list, a really comprehensive set of topics covering a lot of ground, both nationally and internationally. And, for all of you focusing on the UPSC exams, really getting to grips with the underlying issues and their broader implications, well, it's absolutely crucial. We'll aim to break down the essentials and really highlight what makes each of these significant from that mains perspective you mentioned.
Right then, let's get straight into it. First up, something very much about safety and security. These nationwide civil defense drills, they're happening across, 244 districts? That's quite widespread. So when we talk about civil defense, what exactly are we talking about? What does it involve?
Well, at its heart, civil defense is really about preparing the civilian population, the people, and also the essential infrastructure, preparing them to be resilient and respond effectively during emergencies. That could be wartime situations or could be natural disasters. It covers quite a range.
Okay.
And the measures include things like practice drills, simulating potential threats, setting up emergency shelters, ensuring reliable communication networks are in place, and very importantly, getting the community involved, making sure people are aware and prepared.
But I noticed these districts are categorized 1, 2, and 3. What's the logic there? Why the different categories?
Right. So these categories are assigned based on how vulnerable a district is considered to be and whether it has what we call vital installations. Category 1 districts, for example, they're typically seen as highly vulnerable. They might have critical infrastructure like, say, oil refineries, nuclear plants, or maybe important military areas.
I see.
Categories 2 and 3 then represent, decreasing levels of vulnerability and fewer of those really key assets. It basically helps make sure that the preparedness measures, the resources allocated, are appropriate for the specific risks each district faces.
Makes sense. We've also seen the terms SDRF and mock drills mentioned. Could you just quickly clarify those for us?
Sure. SDRF stands for State Disaster Response Force. These are specialized units right at the state level. They're trained and equipped specifically to handle different types of disasters and emergencies. Rescue relief operations, that's their focus.
Okay, the state-level team.
Exactly, and mock drills. Well, they are basically simulated emergency scenarios. Think of things like a practice air raid, or maybe simulating a major industrial accident, or even an attack. The whole point is to test how ready everyone is, the different agencies, the public, how well they coordinate, and how effective the response plans actually are in practice.
Okay, now this is interesting. These nationwide drills on May 7th, they seem timed very closely to that recent terror attack in Pahalgam. How significant is that link?
The timing certainly suggests a strong connection, doesn't it? The terrible loss of 26 civilian lives in Pahalgam back on April 22nd. Well, it very likely served as a stark reminder. A reminder of the need to really bolster our security preparedness, especially in areas where civilians are present. So yes, these drills could very well be a direct response aimed at evaluating and improving our ability to protect civilians against potential threats.
And it's not just a local thing, is it? I understand the Union Home Ministry is involved, working with the states and UTs.
Precisely. The fact that the Union Home Ministry is overseeing this really underscores the national importance attached to these drills. Effective civil defense, it really needs that seamless cooperation between the center and all the state and UT administrations. It's essential for a coordinated, effective response across the whole country.
So what kind of activities are actually part of these drills? Air raids, sirens, blackouts? It sounds quite intense.
Yes, they are designed to mimic real emergency conditions as much as possible. So that includes things like sounding air raid sirens to alert people, implementing blackout measures to reduce visibility at night, conducting evacuation exercises, moving people to safer spots, practicing camouflage techniques for important buildings or assets, and even clearing out existing bunkers to make sure they're actually usable if needed.
And it's happening across such a wide geography. Delhi, Kashmir, Hyderabad, Raichur, Aurangabad, Mumbai, even all 75 districts in UP. That's a huge undertaking.
It is. The extensive participation across such diverse regions really highlights the understanding that, well, the risk isn't limited to just a few specific zones, including places like Delhi, obviously strategically important, and Kashmir, given the security situation there, is key. And extending it to all districts in a large state like Uttar Pradesh, that shows a very comprehensive approach to preparedness.
It's also interesting that states can add newly identified vulnerable areas. That suggests this isn't static, right? Our assessment of risk evolves.
Exactly. The security landscape is dynamic. New vulnerabilities can emerge. By allowing states to include these newly identified areas, it ensures the preparedness measures stay flexible and adapt to the latest local risk assessments.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit. What's the bigger organizational picture here? We heard about the Director General of Civil Defense and the Civil Defense Act of 1968.
Right. The Directorate General of Civil Defense, or DGCD, that's the main central body. They're responsible for setting the policies and coordinating all civil defense activities across India. It operates under the Civil Defense Act of 1968, which is the legal foundation for civil defense organizations, and outlines their roles.
And how do bodies like the NDMA and the SDRF we mentioned earlier fit in?
Good question. The National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA, is the apex body for disaster management overall in India. Its role is to lay down policies, plans, guidelines for managing disasters, and that naturally includes aspects of civil defense. The SDRF, as we said, are the state-level operational forces. They're the ones putting these guidelines into action on the ground, responding to emergencies, doing the rescue and relief work.
It's also noted that the Integrated Defense Staff and the Indian Air Force are involved. That points towards a military connection.
Absolutely. Their involvement signifies a joined-up approach to national security. It shows that civilian preparedness is viewed as an integral part of the overall defense strategy, especially when you think about potential conflicts or external threats.
And India has something called a passive defense strategy for protecting civilians near borders during wartime. What does that mean?
Passive defense basically refers to measures taken to reduce the impact of attacks on civilians and infrastructure without direct military confrontation. So things like building shelters, blackout procedures, evacuation plans, training civilians in basic self-protection and first aid. It's particularly relevant in areas close to international borders that might be more exposed during a conflict.
Okay. So for our listeners preparing for the UPSC mains exam, what are the really key takeaways from this focus on civil defense drills? What should they be thinking about?
Several important points stand out for mains. First, the fact that our security preparedness in civilian zones during major threats hasn't really been tested on this scale before. That's significant. Second, there seem to be potential gaps in coordination between different agencies, and definitely a need for greater public awareness about what to do.
Right, the coordination and awareness aspects.
Yes. Then there's the vulnerability of our big urban centers. Densely populated areas present unique challenges. From a societal angle, these drills aim to build awareness and resilience in communities. For polity, it highlights that crucial interagency and center-state coordination needed for national security.
And governance?
For governance, it underscores the decentralized responsibility, with district magistrates playing a key role in disaster management at the local level. And finally, there are ethical considerations, like how do you run these drills effectively without causing unnecessary panic, balancing transparency and necessary secrecy.
That's a very thorough breakdown for mains. What about the way forward? What steps should we be taking to strengthen civil defense?
Looking ahead, I think making annual drills a regular practice in sensitive zones is crucial, not just reactive. We also need to regularly update our vulnerability mapping using tech like GIS and satellite data. Standardized public communication protocols during drills are essential, clear, consistent messaging to avoid confusion and panic.
Community involvement, too.
Definitely. Encourage community participation, maybe even integrate civil defense education into school curriculums, build that culture of preparedness, and crucially, ensuring states have adequate budgets and logistical support for their civil defense infrastructure. That's vital.
And just quickly, for the prelims exam, what are the absolute must-know points?
For prelims, know the Civil Defense Act, 1968. Remember, DGCD is under the Ministry of Home Affairs, MHA. Understand the district categories, 1, 2, 3. No SDRF functions under the State Disaster Management Authority, SDMA. Be aware of the simulated scenarios like air raids, blackouts, the likely trigger the Paham attack, and recognize vulnerable areas near the low sea like Kupwara, Baramulla.
Okay, great. Let's shift gears now to what seems like some positive news. India has improved its ranking in the Human Development Index for 2023. Can you give us the basics first? What exactly does the HDI measure?
Absolutely. The Human Development Index, or HDI, it's a composite index put together by the UNDP, the United Nations Development Program. It aims to measure a country's overall achievement in three key dimensions of human development. Those are a long and healthy life, measured by life expectancy at birth, access to knowledge, measured by expected years of schooling and mean years of schooling, and a decent standard of living measured by gross national income, or GNI, per capita.
And based on those scores, countries get grouped into different categories, right?
That's right. Countries usually fall into four tiers: very high, high, medium, and low human development based on their HDI value. It's also worth mentioning the Multidimensional Poverty Index, the MPI. That often comes up alongside the HDI. The MPI looks beyond just income poverty, considering various deprivations people face in health, education, and living standards simultaneously.
And the 2025 report, it has a specific theme, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Something about AI.
It does, yes. The theme for the 2025 report is quite timely. A matter of choice, people and possibilities in the age of AI. So it's really drawing that link between a country's development trajectory and how it navigates the opportunities and challenges presented by artificial intelligence, responsibly using AI, essentially.
So what's the headline news for India in these latest rankings?
The good news is India has climbed to rank 130 out of 193 countries in the 2023 HDI. That's up 3 places from the 2022 ranking of 133. Our HDI score has also increased from 0.676 in 2022 to 0.685 in 2023. This brings us closer to that 0.770 threshold for the high human development category.
And what specific areas saw improvements that led to this rise?
We've seen progress on several fronts. Life expectancy at birth has gone up to 72 years. Expected years of schooling have increased to 13 years. That's quite a jump from just 8.2 years back in 1990. And our gross national income per capita has seen a significant rise too, about 4 times higher than in 1990, now standing at $9,046.76.
Impressive growth.
Yeah.
And wasn't there also good news on poverty reduction?
Yes, the report highlights that a very significant number, 135 million people in India, were lifted out of multidimensional poverty between 2015 and 2021. That's definitely a notable achievement.
However, the report isn't all positive, is it? It flags persistent challenges, particularly around inequality.
That's a very crucial point. Despite the overall progress, inequality remains a major drag on India's human development. In fact, the report calculates that inequality reduces India's overall HDI value by 30.7%. That's one of the highest losses due to inequality in Asia. It shows that the benefits of development aren't being shared equally across the population. Big disparities still exist.
And gender disparity is another area needing focus.
Absolutely. The report does point to ongoing concerns about gender gaps, particularly in women's participation in the workforce and in political life. Although it does acknowledge the recent women's reservation bill as a positive step, a hopeful sign for potentially improving female political representation down the line.
The government has obviously rolled out many schemes over the years targeting these areas. Could you touch upon some key ones?
Certainly. In health, you have major initiatives like Ayushman Bharat for health coverage, Janani Suraksha Yojana for maternal health, Poshan Abhiyan tackling malnutrition, and the National Health Mission strengthening primary care. In education, there's the Right to Education Act, Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, and the big one, the National Education Policy 2020. For gender equality, besides the reservation bill, you've got schemes like Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, Mahila Shakti Kendras, and MUDRA loans for women entrepreneurs. And specifically related to the report's theme, in AI and digital empowerment, there's Digital India, NETI Ayog's AI mission, and the India AI program aiming for leadership in AI.
Okay, so for mains preparation, what are the critical issues and impacts related to India's HDI performance that listeners should be analyzing?
Right, for mains. First, that persistent inequality, income gaps, gender gaps, regional disparities, that's central. Second, the quality of services. It's not just about access, but learning outcomes in education, the effectiveness of health infrastructure. Third, the potential risks of an AI divide worsening existing inequalities. That's a big future challenge.
And the impacts.
Socially, the impact of improved quality of life from better health and education. Economically, the rising GNI is important, as are the growing AI skills in the workforce. From a governance perspective, it's about the state's capacity to implement these upliftment programs effectively. And ethically, the whole question of responsible AI for inclusive development is becoming very significant.
So, what does the way forward look like? How can India further boost its HDI?
It needs a multi-pronged approach, really. Targeted interventions to bridge those inequality gaps are key. Continued investment in the quality of education and health services is vital. Promoting decentralized development, empowering states and districts can be more effective. Harnessing AI for human development, but doing it transparently, fairly, inclusively. That's the challenge highlighted by the report. And finally, sustaining the momentum on poverty reduction through social safety nets and skills development.
And for prelims, the quick facts and figures to retain.
Okay, prelims pointers. India's 2023 HDI rank, 130, HDI score, 0.685, GNI per capita, $9,046.76. Life expectancy, 72 years. Expected years of schooling, 13. Multidimensional poverty reduction, 135 million, 2015-2021. Inequality loss, 30.7%. And remember the 2025 UNDP report title, A Matter of Choice, People and Possibilities in the Age of AI.
Got it. Let's move on. The Supreme Court has come down hard on firecrackers in the Delhi NCR region, ordering a strict crackdown. What's the core issue here?
The core issue is, quite simply, the terrible air pollution in Delhi NCR, especially during winter. We see dangerously high levels of particulate matter PM 2.5 and PM 10. Firecrackers are a major contributor to these peak pollution episodes, making breathing difficult and worsening health problems for millions.
What about these green crackers we hear about? Are they a safe alternative?
Well, green crackers were developed with the claim that they produce about 30–40% less pollution than traditional ones. However, their actual environmental safety is still, let's say, under scrutiny by the courts. There isn't a definitive scientific consensus or judicial endorsement that they are truly safe or solve the problem.
And just to clarify for everyone, which areas exactly make up the National Capital Region, the NCR?
Right, the NCR isn't just Delhi. It includes the entire National Capital Territory of Delhi, plus several districts from the neighboring states. Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, and Rajasthan. It's a vast, heavily urbanized and industrialized zone, making it very susceptible to pollution buildup.
The Supreme Court warned of contempt of court. What does that imply in this context?
Contempt of court is essentially the power the judiciary has to punish disobedience or disrespect towards its orders. Here, the SC is warning the governments of UP, Rajasthan, and Haryana that if they fail to properly enforce the complete ban on firecrackers within their NCR districts, they could face legal consequences for deliberately ignoring the court's directions. This could mean fines or even action against the officials responsible for implementation.
And the ban itself seems very comprehensive: manufacture, sale, storage, even online delivery.
Yes, the court has been very clear they need a complete ban. They specifically noted that just banning them around Deepa Valley doesn't work. People just buy and store them earlier or use them later. The court had actually refused to ease these restrictions earlier this year, citing the ongoing pollution crisis and the fact that most people don't have access to things like air purifiers.
And the court directed states to use a specific law for enforcement.
That's right. The SCA instructed the states to use their powers under the Environment Protection Act of 1986. This act gives the government the legal authority to take necessary measures to control and prevent environmental pollution, including banning activities that contribute to it.
What other government initiatives are already in place trying to tackle NCR's air pollution?
There are several. The Environment Protection Act, 1986, is the overarching law. Then there's the Commission for Air Quality Management, the CAQM, which implements the Graded Response Action Plan, or GRA. GRA includes temporary bans on crackers during severe pollution periods. The National Clean Air Program, NCIP, aims for longer-term pollution reduction. And Delhi itself has its own measures: previous cracker bans, vehicle restrictions like odd even, smart towers, promoting EVs, etc.
So, thinking about mains again, what are the critical issues surrounding this firecracker ban that people should analyze?
Okay, for mains. First, air pollution as a public health emergency, particularly in urban India like the NCR. That's the big picture. Second, the issue is state compliance. How effectively are court orders and regulations actually implemented on the ground? Third, the enforcement loopholes, illegal storage, online sales, bypassing local bans. How do you plug those?
The limitations of green crackers, too.
Yes, exactly. The debate around green crackers, are they a real solution or not? Also, consider the direct health impacts of pollution, the legal angle of judicial activism and environmental protection, governance challenges and center-state coordination for regional problems like air pollution, and finally, the ethical dimension balancing cultural traditions associated with festivals against the undeniable public health risks.
What more can be done? What's the way forward to make the ban more effective?
Well, stricter enforcement is key. Maybe dedicated district task forces, using technology for monitoring. Strong public awareness campaigns well before festival seasons, focusing on the health impacts. Regulation of online platforms to stop the sale and delivery of banned items is crucial now, promoting alternative ways to celebrate, maybe community laser shows or other non-polluting events, and maybe, just maybe, accelerating R&D into genuinely eco-safe alternatives, if such a thing is truly possible.
And for prelims, the key takeaways on the firecracker ban.
Prelims points. Know the NCR states, Delhi, parts of UP, Haryana, Rajasthan. Know the Enforcement Act, Environment Protection Act 1986. Know the Commission, CAQM. Understand contempt of court in this context. Know about green crackers. 30% reduction claim, but not judicially endorsed as safe. And be aware of Delhi's consistently poor PM 2.5 levels.
Okay, shifting now to international trade. A major development. The India-UK Free Trade Agreement, the FTA, has been signed. Let's start with the basics. What exactly is an FTA?
Right. A free trade agreement, or FTA, is essentially a pact between two or more countries designed to reduce or eliminate barriers to trade between them. These barriers are usually things like tariffs, which are taxes on imported goods, and quotas, which limit the quantity of certain goods that can be imported. The main goal is to boost economic cooperation and increase trade by making it cheaper and easier for businesses to operate across borders.
The terms tariff lines and quotas were mentioned specifically regarding this deal. What do they mean?
Sure. Tariff lines refer to the specific, detailed classification of products that tariffs apply to. An FTA typically involves cutting or eliminating tariffs on a large number of these lines. Quotas, as you said, are limits on the volume of specific goods allowed in. FTAs often aim to remove these quotas or at least increase them significantly to allow more trade.
And the agreement also includes something called the Double Contribution Convention. What's that about?
Ah, yes, the Double Contribution Convention. That's a type of Social Security agreement. Its purpose is to prevent workers who temporarily move between the two countries for work from having to pay Social Security contributions in both countries simultaneously on the same income. In this India-UK FTA, it means Indian workers going to the UK will be exempt from paying UK Social Security for up to 3 years, provided they continue contributing in India. It reduces their costs and makes movement easier.
Okay, so what are the main highlights of this India-UK FTA? What makes it significant?
It's quite a landmark deal. A key highlight is that 99% of Indian goods exported to the UK will get zero-duty access. That covers almost the entire value of our current exports. On the flip side, India will cut tariffs on 90% of British products over time, with 85% of those tariffs going down to zero within 10 years.
Any specific examples?
Yes, some high-profile ones. UK whiskey and gin, for instance, currently face tariffs of 150% here. That will gradually come down to 40% over a decade. Automotive tariffs from the UK, currently over 100%, will also be reduced down to 10% eventually, but under a specific import quota system.
What government initiatives pave the way for this agreement?
Well, this FTA fits squarely into India's broader strategy of pursuing FTAs to boost exports, as outlined in the Foreign Trade Policy 2023. It's also seen as a boost for domestic initiatives like Make in India and Startup India by providing better market access. The India-UK Enhanced Trade Partnership, signed back in 2021, really set the stage for this full FTA. And India's been actively negotiating social security agreements, SSAs, like the Double Contribution Convention with many countries to help our professionals working abroad.
Thinking about the mains exam, what are the potential impacts, both positive and perhaps challenging, of this FTA?
For mains, it's important to see both sides. On the positive side, it should significantly boost Indian exports in key sectors like textiles, gems and jewelry, pharmaceuticals, and IT services. The Social Security Agreement eases things for Indian professionals in the UK. Diplomatically, it deepens the India-UK strategic partnership. However, there are challenges or areas to watch. We need to monitor the trade balance to avoid import surges hurting domestic industries.
Like which industries?
Well, sectors like automobiles, liquor, and maybe dairy could face stiffer competition. Harmonizing regulations and standards, ensuring mutual recognition, can be complex. Non-tariff barriers like complex procedures or specific standards might still remain even if tariffs fall. So, domestic sector preparedness is key.
What steps should India take now to maximize the benefits of this FTA? What's the way forward?
Key steps include supporting our MSMEs and exporters to understand and navigate the UK market requirements under the FTA. We need robust monitoring of trade data to see the real impact and address any negative consequences quickly. Continuing to negotiate similar ambitious FTAs with other major markets like the EU, Canada is important. implementing domestic safeguards where needed, like anti-dumping duties if there's evidence of unfair trade practices, and ensuring mutual recognition of standards to facilitate services trade, too.
And for prelims, the quick points to remember on the India-UK FTA.
Prelims focus. Signed May 7, 2025. 99% Indian exports get zero duty access. Tariffs cut on 90% UK products, 85% to zero in 10 years. Double contribution convention up to 3 years. Whiskey gin duty cut 150% to 40%. Remember, the UK called it their largest trade deal ever.
Okay. Let's turn now to a very long-running, often quite heated issue. The Sutlej-Yamuna Link, or SYL Canal dispute. What's the basic issue here?
The absolute core of the SYL dispute is a sharing of water from the Ravi and Beas rivers, specifically between Punjab and Haryana. The SYL Canal itself is a proposed waterway about 214 kilometers long, meant to connect the Sutlej River in Punjab to the Yamuna River system. The idea is to allow Haryana to actually receive the share of Ravi Beas waters that it was allocated.
Can you give us a bit of the history? How does this dispute even start?
It really dates back to 1966, when the old state of Punjab was reorganized, creating the new states of Punjab and Haryana. During that reorganization, the crucial issue of how to divide the waters of the Ravi and Beas rivers wasn't fully resolved. The SYL Canal was later conceived as the mechanism to deliver Haryana's allocated share.
Which main rivers are involved in this water sharing?
The key rivers are the Sutlej, which flows through Punjab, and the Yamuna, which flows through Haryana, though originating elsewhere. The canal is meant to link the Sutlej system to the Yamuna basin to facilitate that transfer of Ravi Beas waters.
Is there a specific part of the Constitution that deals with these kinds of interstate water disputes?
Yes, Article 262 of the Constitution. It empowers Parliament to legislate on the adjudication of disputes relating to the waters of interstate rivers or river valleys. Acting on this, Parliament passed the Interstate Water Disputes Act in 1956, which provides the framework for setting up tribunals to resolve such disputes.
So what's the latest news on the SYL dispute? What's happening now?
The latest development is that the Supreme Court has come down quite strongly on Punjab. Punjab had tried to denotify the land that was acquired years ago for the canal's construction. The court called this move high-handed and unconstitutional, reiterating earlier judgments. The SC has directed Punjab to restore that land so construction can proceed. And crucially, it has instructed the central government to take possession of the land and actually start the construction work following Haryana's plea for enforcement.
There have been attempts to resolve this before, right? Agreements, orders.
Oh yes, many attempts over decades. The Punjab Reorganization Act of '66 didn't settle it. The center issued a water allocation order in 1976, giving Haryana a share. There was an agreement in 1981 involving Punjab, Haryana, and Rajasthan. But then, in 2004, Punjab passed the controversial Punjab Termination of Agreements Act, trying to unilaterally cancel all previous water-sharing agreements. The Supreme Court eventually declared that 2004 Act unconstitutional in 2016.
And the canal itself. Is any of it built?
The situation on the ground is that the Haryana portion of the canal is largely complete. But the main stretch within Punjab remains mostly unbuilt due to strong political resistance and local opposition over the years.
Thinking about mains, what are the key dimensions of this long-running SYL dispute that listeners should analyze?
For Mains, the SYL case is a classic example of federalism versus regional interests, highlighting center-state tensions and the difficulty in enforcing interstate agreements. Water scarcity, particularly the perception of it in Punjab, is a huge factor driving the resistance. The repeated failure to implement judicial orders raises questions about the enforcement power of the judiciary in such sensitive interstate matters. The issue is deeply politically polarized within Punjab, making compromise very difficult.
What about other impacts?
Legally, it reinforces the Supreme Court's role as the final arbiter on constitutional matters. In governance terms, it shows weaknesses in enforcing interstate pacts. Agriculturally, it directly impacts irrigation potential in water-scarce southern Haryana. And historically, there have been securital implications too. The dispute has fueled protests, some violent in the past.
What's a potential way forward? How can this deadlock ever be resolved?
It's tough. A resolution likely needs several elements. Constitutional enforcement by the center, as directed by the SC, seems unavoidable now. Perhaps exploring some form of high-level, neutral mediation mechanism could help build trust, though past attempts haven't succeeded. Looking at alternative solutions, maybe advanced satellite mapping of the entire river basin for more accurate water assessment. Promoting water use efficiency much more aggressively in Punjab, things like drip irrigation, shifting cropping patterns could ease the pressure over time. And definitely much more transparent communication with all stakeholders is needed to manage perceptions and build understanding.
And for prelims, the quick facts on SYL.
Prelims. SYL canal length approx 214 kilometers. Main dispute over Ravi B's waters via sledge. Key acts. Punjab Termination of Agreements Act, 2004, ruled unconstitutional. Interstate Water Disputes Act, 1956. Remember Article 262. SC Judgment on the 2004 Act, unconstitutional in 2016.
Okay, let's shift focus now to a major legal outcome. The conviction of G. Jennerton Reddy in an illegal mining case. Can you give us some background? What exactly is illegal mining in this context, and who is G. Jennerton Reddy?
Sure. Illegal mining basically means extracting minerals without proper authorization, violating environmental, forest, and mining laws. G. Jennerton Reddy is a former minister from Karnataka and the founder of the Abulapuram Mining Company, OMC. He was a key figure in what became known as the Bellary illegal mining scam. This involved large-scale, unauthorized extraction of iron ore, primarily in forest areas spanning Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh. It allegedly caused huge revenue losses to the states and significant environmental damage.
Which laws were allegedly broken in this operation?
A whole range of laws were cited. The Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation Act, 1957, the main mining law. The Forest Conservation Act, 1980, because much of the mining was in forest areas. Also, the Prevention of Corruption Act, 1988, due to allegations of bribery and collusion with officials. And various sections of the Indian Penal Code related to things like forgery, cheating, and criminal conspiracy.
What's the latest development in this case?
The big news is that on May 6, 2025, a special CBI court in Bengaluru convicted G. Jennerton Reddy and several associates in connection with the OMC illegal mining activities. Reddy was sentenced to 5 years in prison and fined a substantial euro crore. This conviction comes after a very long investigation, almost 15 years, looking into illegal extraction, export of iron ore, and associated bribery. The court reportedly found evidence of things like manipulating permits, encroaching on forest land, illegal exports, collusion with officials, falsifying documents, and using unauthorized routes for transport.
Were there any specific reports or government actions that first brought this issue to light?
Yes, the Justice Santosh Hegde report in 2011 was pivotal. He was the Karnataka Lokayukta then, and his report detailed the massive scale of illegal mining in the Bellary region. That report had major political fallout and led to the Supreme Court imposing a temporary ban on mining in Karnataka from 2011 to 2013 to curb the illegalities. Other related initiatives include setting up campaign funds for reforestation and the Ministry of Mines introducing a star rating system to promote compliance in the mining sector.
Looking at this from a Maine's perspective, what are the broader implications of this conviction? What should listeners analyze?
For Maines, this case highlights several critical issues. One is weak regulatory oversight in the mining sector, which allowed such large-scale illegal activity to flourish for years. Another is the political corporate nexus, how powerful individuals can potentially manipulate the system. The severe environmental degradation caused by unregulated mining in ecologically sensitive areas is a major theme. And the issue of delayed justice, it took 15 years for this conviction.
What about the impacts?
Legally, the conviction shows the CBI and judiciary can pursue complex, high-profile corruption cases, even if it takes time. Environmentally, it underscores the damage: deforestation, pollution, erosion. From a governance angle, it raises serious questions about accountability and bureaucracy in politics. But potentially, such convictions could help restore some public trust in anti-corruption efforts.
What steps could be taken going forward to prevent similar large-scale illegal mining?
The way forward probably involves strengthening surveillance, using technology like satellite monitoring, maybe blockchain for permits to improve transparency, fast-tracking trials for mining and environmental offenses, perhaps through dedicated courts, making mining lease allocations more transparent, maybe through mandatory online auctions, better protection for whistleblowers who expose illegal activities as they often face threats, and ensuring that funds meant for community development from mining royalties, like district mineral foundations, are properly tracked and audited.
And for prelims, the key details to remember on the Reddy conviction.
Prelims focus: convicted person, G. Jennerton Reddy, company, Abulapuram Mining Company, OMC, fine, 5 crore, jail term, 5 years. Laws violated: MNDR Act, Forest Act, IPC, Prevention of Corruption Act, key location, Bellary District, Karnataka. Remember the Lokayukta Report 2011 as a trigger.
Okay, let's move now to the international stage.
Mm.
The UN Security Council recently discussed the Pahalgam terror attack. What's the significance of this happening at the UNSC?
Well, the UN Security Council, the UNSC, is the UN's primary body for maintaining international peace and security. When it discusses a specific incident like the Pahalgam attack, where tragically 26 civilians were killed, it elevates the issue to the highest international level. It signals global concern and can potentially lead to collective condemnation or calls for action, even if formal resolutions are sometimes hard to achieve.
What's the broader context here, especially regarding India-Pakistan relations and cross-border terrorism?
Unfortunately, the region has a long history with terrorism. Attacks in Jammu and Kashmir are frequently linked by India to terrorist groups operating from across the border. India has consistently maintained that Pakistan provides support and safe havens to these groups, a charge Pakistan denies. This forms a major point of contention between the two countries.
So what came out of the UNSC discussion on the Pahalgam attack?
The UNSC did hold a discussion, reportedly following requests from some members, particularly Western allies of India. However, no formal resolution was adopted. This outcome was apparently influenced by China remaining neutral and Russia staying silent on the matter. During the discussion, Pakistan reportedly tried to raise the broader Kashmir issue. India, meanwhile, firmly reiterated its position that the attack was an act of cross-border terrorism originating from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The UNSC members did condemn the killing of civilians and called for bilateral de-escalation between India and Pakistan. India, for its part, emphasized its right to self-defense and rejected any third-party mediation on Kashmir.
What has been India's consistent stand at the UN regarding terrorism?
India's long-standing position at the UN is that terrorism is a global menace that needs a unified response, and it shouldn't be justified or linked to any particular cause, religion, or region. India has been championing the adoption of a comprehensive convention on international terrorism, or CCIT, for years. The goal is a universally accepted definition of terrorism and a stronger legal framework to fight it. India also actively engages in forums like the FATF, Financial Action Task Force, to counter terror financing and builds bilateral and multilateral counter-terror cooperation.
From a mains perspective, what are the key implications of this UNSC discussion? What should listeners analyze?
For Mains, this episode highlights the ongoing lack of global consensus on defining terrorism, often due to differing geopolitical interests among major powers. China's reluctance to designate certain Pakistan-based groups continues to be a challenge. It also shows the limitations of the UNSC itself, particularly the impact of veto power and political divisions among permanent members. Pakistan's persistent efforts to internationalize the Kashmir issue, even with limited traction, are notable.
And for India?
Diplomatically, the fact that the discussion happened, reportedly at the behest of allies, suggests India's growing influence. Security-wise, it underscores the continuing threat in J&K. Geopolitically, it reflects the fault lines in the UNSC and the growing India-West alignment on counterterrorism. And importantly, it reaffirms India's consistent stance on sovereignty regarding Kashmir, rejecting external interference.
What should be India's strategy moving forward in countering terrorism internationally?
The way forward likely involves strengthening international counter-terror coalitions, especially with like-minded countries, continuing the push for the CCIT at the UN, however long it takes. Enhancing intelligence sharing with key partners is crucial for preemption. Domestically, building local resilience in conflict-affected areas through development and engagement, and maintaining diplomatic pressure on Pakistan through various forums like FATF and bilateral channels.
And for prelims, the quick points on the UNSC discussion.
Prelims. Pahalgam attack bait. April 22, 2025, 26 killed. UNSC discussion happened, but no resolution. India's stand, cross-border terror from Baku. No UNSC composition, 5 permanent plus 10 non-permanent. No about CCIT, India's proposed convention. No FATF's role regarding pressure on Pakistan.
Let's turn now to the very distressing situation in Gaza. A severe humanitarian crisis is unfolding. Can you give us the basic context?
Yes, it's a deeply concerning situation. The Gaza Strip is a small, densely populated Palestinian territory bordering Israel and Egypt. It's been under Hamas governance since 2007. The region is, of course, the focal point of the long-standing Israeli-Palestinian conflict, marked by cycles of violence. The current crisis, especially since the major escalation following events in late 2023, has become catastrophic. We're seeing critical shortages of everything: food, water, medicine, fuel, widespread destruction, and immense human suffering due to the ongoing ongoing conflict and blockades. The involvement of Houthi rebels in Yemen launching attacks on Israel has also added a dangerous regional dimension recently.
What are the immediate consequences of the ongoing Israeli military operations inside Gaza?
The consequences are devastating. We're seeing massive displacement of people, perhaps hundreds of thousands forced from their homes. There's widespread destruction of vital civilian infrastructure, hospitals, schools, UN shelters have all been hit. And tragically, many humanitarian aid workers from organizations like the World Food Program and the UN itself have been killed while trying to deliver assistance.
What has the international response been?
The UN, WHO, and numerous aid agencies have made repeated urgent calls for an immediate ceasefire to allow aid in and protect civilians. Countries like Egypt and Qatar have been trying to mediate to establish humanitarian corridors, but access remains severely restricted due to ongoing fighting and blockades. UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, is reporting dire conditions. Hospitals running out of fuel, unable to function, and alarming rates of child malnutrition due to the lack of food and basic supplies.
What's India's position and response to this crisis?
India has maintained a balanced position. It strongly condemns terrorism, but also expresses deep concern over the loss of civilian lives and the humanitarian situation. India has sent humanitarian aid medicines, tents, food supplies, usually routed via Egypt, to help the people of Gaza. Diplomatically, India continues to advocate for a two-state solution as the path towards long-term peace, where both Israel and Palestine can coexist securely.
Looking at this from a Maine's perspective, what are the critical issues and impacts for analysis?
For Maine's, this crisis raises grave concerns about potential violations of international humanitarian law, IHL, the rules of war concerning civilian protection, attacks on protected sites like hospitals, and ensuring humanitarian access. The severe restrictions on aid delivery are a major issue in themselves. The deep divisions in the global response, especially visible at the UNSC, highlight the challenges of collective action. There's a significant risk of regional instability, potentially drawing in more actors.
And the broader impacts.
The humanitarian impact is obviously catastrophic for the people of Gaza. Geopolitically, the conflict fuels tensions and potentially anti-Western sentiment in the region and beyond. Diplomatically, it's a balancing act for countries like India, which have good relations with both Israel and Arab nations. And there are security implications, too, including potential spillover effects and risks to maritime security, as seen with the Houthi attacks.
What needs to happen? What's the way forward to address this dire situation?
The immediate urgent need is for a ceasefire, a halt to the fighting to allow for the establishment of safe, UN-monitored humanitarian corridors. Aid needs to get in unimpeded. It's crucial that all parties respect the Geneva Conventions and IHL protect civilians, hospitals, aid workers. Renewed diplomatic efforts are vital, perhaps through the UN or involving key regional players like the Arab League, pushing for a sustainable political solution. A coordinated global aid coalition could help scale up assistance, and ultimately, there must be a serious renewed push for a long-term peace based on the two-state solution, addressing the legitimate aspirations of both sides.
And for prelims, the key details on the Gaza crisis.
Prelims. Know the location, Gaza Strip. Know Hamas governs it. Note Israel's response to the recent Houthi attack on Tel Aviv involved strikes in Yemen. Key humanitarian actors, UNRWA, WHO, WFP, Red Cross, Red Crescent. Legal framework, Geneva Conventions, International Humanitarian Law, IHL. India's stance, condemns terror and civilian deaths, sent aid via Egypt, supports two-state solution.
Okay. Let's shift back home now to some corporate governance news. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs, the MCA, has ordered probes into BlueSmart and Gensol. What's the MCA's role here?
The Ministry of Corporate Affairs, MCA, is the nodal ministry responsible for administering the Companies Act and overseeing corporate governance in India. Its job includes ensuring companies comply with laws, promoting transparency, protecting investor interests, and investigating allegations of corporate fraud or mismanagement.
Can you briefly introduce BlueSmart and Gensol?
Sure. BlueSmart is quite well known now. It's an electric vehicle, EV ride-hailing service, operating entirely with EVs in several Indian cities. Gensol Engineering Ltd. is primarily in the clean energy space, particularly solar EPC, engineering, procurement, construction. Importantly, Gensol is also linked to BlueSmart, often described as its parent or a closely associated entity.
And this probe is under a specific section of the Companies Act, right? Section 210.
Yes, that's correct. The MCA has ordered the investigation under Section 210 of the Companies Act 2013. This section empowers the central government to order an investigation into a company's affairs if it believes the business is being conducted fraudulently, unlawfully, or if there are serious questions about its management or financials that need a deeper look.
What are the specific concerns that triggered this probe into BlueSmart and Gensol?
The report suggests the probe stems from concerns about how funds raised by the companies have been used, their corporate structure, and the adequacy of their shareholding disclosures. Allegations mentioned include potential diversion of funds, questionable transactions between related parties, entities linked through ownership or control, and a lack of financial transparency. This formal investigation usually follows an initial inquiry by the Registrar of Companies, ROWIS, which likely flagged these issues. It's important to add, though, that both companies have denied any wrongdoing and stated they are cooperating with the MCA.
What's the broader legal framework governing companies in India?
The main law is the Companies Act 2013. It covers everything from incorporation to winding up. Sections 206 and 207 allow the ROSI to call for information or inspect books initially. Section 210, as we said, allows for a full investigation, which can be done by the Serious Fraud Investigation Office, SFIO, or appointed inspectors. Beyond the Act, the MCA pushes for better corporate governance norms, especially important in the fast-growing startup sector. And for listed companies like Gensol, SEBI regulations add another layer of requirements regarding disclosures and governance.
From a Maine's perspective, what key issues does this MCA probe highlight?
For Maine's, this case potentially points to governance challenges within the startup ecosystem. Sometimes rapid growth can outpace the establishment of robust internal controls and compliance. It raises concerns about investor protection, especially regarding how funds are utilized in privately held but heavily funded ventures. It might suggest a need for regulatory frameworks to keep pace with evolving startup structures and funding models. Issues like opacity in related party transactions and complex group structures are also relevant here.
What could be the impact?
Well, such probes can impact investor confidence, not just in the specific companies, but potentially in the broader sector if governance lapses appear widespread. It definitely underscores the need for strong corporate ethics and diligent board oversight, even in fast-moving startups. And it shows scrutiny extending to the green sector companies attracting ESG-linked investments.
What steps could help prevent such issues in the startup world going forward?
Potential steps could include strengthening compliance audits tailored for startups, perhaps mandating clearer disclosures, especially for related party dealings, even in larger unlisted companies. Better coordination between regulators MCA, SEBI, RBI to track funds across complex structures might be needed. More investor education on due diligence is always helpful. And encouraging stronger independent director representation on the boards of highly valued startups handling significant public or investor funds.
And for prelims, the key points on the MCA probe.
Prelims. Probe ordered under Section 210, Companies Act 2013, Companies. BlueSmart, EV ride-hailing, Gensol Engineering, Clean Energy linked to BlueSmart. Regulatory bodies, MCA, ROSI, Registrar of Companies, possibly SFIO, Serious Fraud Investigation Office. Key terms: related party transactions, corporate governance, investor protection.
Right. And finally, let's circle back to the Human Development Report for 2025, specifically its focus on artificial intelligence. We touched on the HDI basics, but maybe just reiterate the core components.
Certainly. As we discussed, the HDI Human Development Index from the UNDP ranks countries based on 3 core dimensions: health, life expectancy at birth, education, mean and expected years of schooling, and standard of living, GNI per capita. It gives a broader picture of well-being than just economic growth.
And this year's report specifically zooms in on AI. How is AI being integrated into development globally?
AI technologies like machine learning, natural language processing is increasingly finding its way into development tools and platforms. Think applications in healthcare AI for diagnostics, managing health records, even drug discovery. In education, personalized learning platforms adapting to student needs. In agriculture, precision farming. In governance, improving service delivery, detecting fraud. It's spreading across many sectors.
The theme, a matter of choice, people and possibilities in the age of AI, sounds quite significant.
Yes, it really captures the core message. AI offers huge potential to accelerate human development, but it's not automatic. The choices we make, how we design, deploy, and govern AI, will determine whether it leads to broadly shared progress or exacerbates existing divides. It emphasizes human agency in shaping AI's impact.
What are the key findings concerning India in this AI-focused report?
Well, alongside the improved HDI rank, 130 in score, a .685, the report notes India's notable strength in AI skills penetration, especially among its younger, tech-savvy population. That's a potential advantage. But it strongly reiterates the inequality issue that 30.7% loss in HDI due to inequality is a major caveat. The UNDP essentially frames AI as a double-edged sword. Immense potential, but also serious risks around deepening inequality, privacy concerns, job displacement, and impacting individual autonomy if not managed well.
What government initiatives in India focus on human development and specifically on integrating AI?
We covered many human development initiatives earlier in health, education, skilling like Skill India, Digital India, specifically on AI, and ITI Aayog's National Strategy for Artificial Intelligence and the subsequent India AI mission are key. They aim for AI for all, focusing on inclusive growth. There's the National Program on AI, various pilot projects using AI in agriculture, healthcare are underway, and initiatives to build AI skills, like Responsible AI for Youth. The government is definitely focusing on building capacity here.
Looking at mains, what are the major challenges India faces in using AI for inclusive human development?
For Maines, a critical challenge is the digital divide. Unequal access to AI tools and the skills to use them could worsen existing inequalities. Algorithmic bias is a huge concern. AI systems learning biases from data, leading to discriminatory outcomes in areas like loan approvals or even policing. Job disruption is another major worry. AI automating tasks faster than the workforce can adapt or reskill. The AI literacy gap across the wider population needs addressing urgently.
But there are positives too.
Absolutely. Huge potential in health, education, agriculture, making governance more efficient. But the negative potentials, privacy erosion, creating a digital underclass, are real. So the ethics and governance of AI become paramount. How do we ensure fairness, accountability, transparency?
What should India's way forward be to ensure AI helps, not harms, human development?
India needs robust AI regulation frameworks that promote innovation but also ensure ethical deployment and protect fundamental rights. Bridging that AI literacy gap through education and public awareness is crucial for inclusive adoption. Actively leveraging AI to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, should be a focus. Promoting public-private partnerships to bring AI benefits to rural and underserved areas is important. And investing in things like explainable AI, XAI, so we understand how AI makes decisions and strong data protection regimes is vital for building trust.
And for prelims, the key takeaways from the 2025 HDI report regarding AI.
Prelims points. India's HDI rank 130, score .6685. HDR 2025 AI theme, a matter of choice. Note, India's relative strength in AI skill penetration. Inequality loss, 30.7%. HDI is published by UNDP. Remember, Niti Aayog's AI strategy for India.
And that brings us to the end of this deep dive covering the key news from May 7th, 2025. We've covered a lot. Civil defense drills, the HDI improvement, the firecracker crackdown, the India-UK FTA, the SYL dispute, the Reddy conviction, the UNSC discussion on Pahalgam, the Gaza crisis, the MCA probe, and AI's growing role in development.
Indeed. This deep dive was designed to give you, our listener, a clear, concise understanding of these crucial current affairs. We aim to highlight their significance and relevance, particularly for your UPSC preparation.
Subscribe for daily updates, and please do drop a comment to share your thoughts. We appreciate the feedback. You can also download the audio or the transcript for your revision needs. Jai Hind.